I'm Matthew.
I'm Marty.
I'm Carlos.
And we are the Heroes 3. Welcome to Heroes 3, the bi-weekly podcast where three friends explore the best, worst, and everything in between in the world of Asian cinema. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at Heroes, the number 3 podcast on all three of them. And this week we are taking a look at Twin Dragons from 1992, or maybe 1999, which is directed by Ringo Lam and Tsui Hark, and of course stars Jackie Chan. And it also stars Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan and Jackie Chan.
Yeah, get a little Parent Trap action here.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it. The end.
Yeah, that's the end of the episode. No, you're fine.
Yeah, this is a really fun entry in our little arc right now. In some ways, it's a little bit of a side quest or something, because we are going back to a movie that was shot longer ago than the last two films. But yeah, I think it's fair to include when we're talking about Jackie's big break in America finally. And a huge part of that was these sort of repackaging of movies in Jackie's back catalog, which we've talked about. And the Dimension re-edit and dub of Twin Dragons is really cool, but it's also extremely entertaining going back to the original Hong Kong cut. And there's quite a few differences. I think it's almost 20 minutes worth of differences between the two cuts here.
Right, and it's similar to the last films that we've covered, where it seems to be mostly the comedic extras, I guess you would say, that are cut in this film. But for me personally, I think that because this was a Hong Kong production, really for the same audience that they were going for, because what we're dealing with here is, I think you mentioned it, Marty, but this was for
it was for the Hong Kong Directors Guild.
Yeah.
It was like a fundraising project, basically.
Right. So with that, what they did is they really went out of their way to include a lot of cameos in the film, people in the industry, and kind of drawing the audience to the movie so they can make more money, which is, that's it. I think it benefits them and it benefits us. So I can't really complain about that. But a lot of these cameos they get their own little like spotlight for a second or two, and for the American cut of the film they would trim those away, and it doesn't take away anything really plot wise for the film, but I feel like the Hong Kong edit of the film is so much more fun because of all of this goofiness. And I mean, obviously, totally. I think that I'm myself, and I'm sure you guys kind of really enjoy seeing a lot of these faces that we've come to recognize over the course of the show. So I definitely would recommend people check out the original version of the film alongside the US version.
Yeah, especially if you're on your own journey, discovering Hong Kong cinema. It would be almost like if you took a Hollywood film that's really cameo heavy, like, I don't know, maybe Zoolander or something, and you cut out a lot of those cameos. That is really where a lot of the kind of juicy moments and where a lot of the comedy and a lot of the joy really, really comes from. It does help, I think, knowing a little bit of the background that this whole project was supposed to kind of have all of your top billed Hong Kong directors on deck, so to speak. And that's also happening in the action department. This is a movie more than maybe any other Jackie Chan movie where I wish I just had more information on the making of, because when you hear the roster of action directors, it's like this murderer's row. So Jackie, obviously, and his team. Also, Tony Leung Siu Hung is listed as an action director.
Yeah.
Choi Siu-ming, who people might know from The Buddhist Fist and other classic movies. Stephen Tong-wei, and Yuen Woo-ping himself. But I've never been able to find accurate information as to who worked on which sequences. I doubt you have these people collaborating on one single sequence. I'm sure it's a case of, this action director taking this scene and so forth. But regardless, what we're left with is a movie that's chocked full of, I would say, more action than you would kind of expect in a Jackie Chan film of this ilk, which is much more on the high concept comedy side. And really, I mean, the action sequences are amazing. In some ways, it's kind of an interesting like change of tone. I would say the action ends up being pretty gritty and pretty real in some cases, whereas the tone of the rest of the movie is, super funny and kind of, I don't know, more madcap zany.
Sure. I think it really has to do with Jackie's character that's doing all of the fighting. So one of the twins is kind of like a streetwise kind of, I don't know, he's kind of like a hustler. And
totally.
He's known,
earrings and everything.
Yeah, he's known in the film to be a good fighter. So you really get to see Jackie, even though he does do some comedic stuff in the fighting. I think Jackie as a fighter on camera looks more aggressive and more dynamic. He gets to do the cool kicks, like you're used to seeing the people that maybe Jackie's fighting against do like the cooler moves, and Jackie's kind of trying to survive around that. And the amazing stuff that he does is kind of this kind of man on the run, like kind of martial arts stuff. But in here, he's really kind of like the tough guy almost, and you get to see
it's cool.
him.
It's a break from the other kind of 90s Jackie roles where he's playing either a cop or like a proxy for a cop. And here, one character is on the other side of the law, and then his separated at birth twin brother is this great concert pianist, sort of silver spoon, never had any martial arts training kind of dude. And it's awesome that Jackie gets to really stretch so much here.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's kind of a classic like fish out of water thing, but it's cool because the fish looks exactly the same in both sides of the water.
Right.
Nice.
Because like I said before, it's very Parent Trappy in the whole like they're twins, but it's played by the same actor, and lots of crazy effects and stuff. It's funny. This is a lot more like effects heavy than I feel like or like camera trick effects, I should say.
Sure.
As opposed to like big explosions and sets getting destroyed and stuff. The plane stuff gets destroyed in this movie, but definitely not quite as huge as like Rumble in the Bronx or Mr. Nice Guy.
And
yeah, definitely it's a lot more special effects heavy than any of the other Hong Kong films of the early 90s we've looked at. And who knows, that could have been part of trying to kind of showcase these Hong Kong directors or something.
Yeah.
I do think, I remember reading somewhere that Jackie wasn't too happy with how the effects ended up looking in the film. And there are a couple of scenes where you can see where the kind of the body replacement kind of matte kind of, it looks
it's the lighting. The lighting gives it away, because I was trying to put my finger on what it was, and there's a couple of times where whenever one Jackie walks in front of the other, you can tell it's a different shot because the lighting will just change just a little bit for like a second.
And I think that it was actually like rotoscoped, where they just went through like and meticulously tried to cut it to each frame, and it's not the cleanest. You can see, especially like you said, when they overlap, that's when you really notice. And there's also moments where you can tell they're supposed to be looking at each other and their line of sight is off. So that kind of pulls you out of the effect as well. But they actually don't lean on those scenes too hard. And actually it's funny regarding the plot. They don't really dwell on the fact that they were separated and they reunite. Like it more becomes a thing where they're caught up in each other's situations and not like Prince and the Pauper, where they're like, oh, let's do this. It's like they're pulled away from these wild like situations that are happening.
Yeah. And what's great is it's not totally relying on the special effects, or I should say, like, not only relying on the special effects. There's so many just ingenious kind of comedic gags using the mistaken identity of these two characters, and I don't know, there are just so many moments where it's like that Hong Kong comedy of the 90s in full effect, and it's just really some beautiful ideas and execution, and it's just a great, I don't know, I think it's a Jackie Chan highlight. I've read in a few places where folks are more critical of the film, even kind of describing it as, only for Jackie Chan completionists. I don't know. I think the movie has a lot going for it. I had a ball of a time rewatching it.
Yeah, I think watching it for the podcast, I ended up enjoying it more than I remember liking it back then. And we were talking about maybe covering Thunderbolt, and I think that Twin Dragons I think it's better than Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt has its moments, but Twin Dragons really pushes you to be entertained, and I think it works in a lot of ways. I'm like I said, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like why I didn't like it as much back then. I can't really remember, but I don't know, it was a good time. And I think maybe part of it for me was getting more familiar with the original version of the film and being armed with the experience of being on this podcast and recognizing all these people.
Yeah, totally. Because a lot of the cameos, I mean, there are actor cameos for sure, but a lot of what's was fun to catch are the directors and producer cameos, And I mean, those aren't faces that we're really probably going to recognize unless we've watched a lot of Hong Kong cinema.
I think, it's good to mention Tsui Hark now then, because actually on the podcast we have seen him on film.
Yeah,
we covered
in Yes, Madam.
him in Yes, Madam. And I forget which medicine his name was, but it was one of them. Aspirin or Panadol or whatever.
I think he was Panadol. I can't remember.
But yeah, so Twin Dragons was released in 92, and that's just after Once Upon a Time in China came out. So he was really riding high, and I mean, he was fairly well known already, so I'm sure that people were really excited to see the next Tsui Hark film, and that it involved Jackie also made it that much more exciting. And even Jackie at this time, we've been covering him and talking about his breakout in the US, but I mean, okay, so I think Police Story 3 came out around this time.
Super Cop was kind of just before this.
Yep, and it's literally like every year, if there's not one big Jackie film, there's two. So it's crazy to think about the early 90s. And I think aesthetically the film looks very still like late 80s, early 90s in how the whole film looks.
Yeah, I think they did a nice job in the Dimension version, sort of remastering it and cleaning it up a little bit. Also interesting, this is the last time, I believe the last time that Jackie and Maggie Cheung appeared in a film together.
Oh.
We mentioned during our Police Story arc that as it happens, Jackie and Maggie actually had a relationship going during this period of time. And this is, I think it sort of came to end kind of around this time or shortly after.
Gotcha.
After this time. But yeah, she's so great in this. I mean, I think every actor is really just sensational in this movie, and particularly like Teddy Robin or Teddy Robin. I'm not sure how
he's great.
Pronounces it.
Yeah.
In the Hong Kong version, he's called Tarzan, and then in the American version, he's called Tyson.
Tyson. Yeah.
Clever.
Yeah, I guess. I don't see why they couldn't just call him Tarzan. I feel like Tarzan's in the public domain, right?
Yeah.
Well, and okay, since you mentioned that.
Oh.
Jackie's alternate, not the Ma Yao, the John Ma, the pianist.
Yeah, the pianist.
I don't know why they did this, but in the Hong Kong version, when he's playing pieces, they're very recognizable, like piano pieces. But I'm pretty sure they're public domain pieces, so like Chopin and stuff like that. But for some reason, they changed all of that for the U.S. version.
Yeah, I noticed that they were different. I didn't take the time out to research what the pieces were, but I thought that was kind of weird.
It's
like
weird,
it seems kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just playing it safe. I mean, most classical music and like music of the Romantic period, which is what John Ma's usually playing in the Hong Kong version, most of that is in the public domain. There is some late Romantic stuff that isn't. I know there's an interesting anecdote. Billy Joel wrote this song that's an adaptation of a theme from the second movement of the second Rachmaninoff piano concerto, and he assumed it was in the public domain, and I guess it was still under copyright.
Dang.
So I don't know. Maybe it was just like a kind of blunt, move, all or nothing move to try to play it safe or something. But
I know some of the music, I get why they changed it, because some of the music, even whenever it's a full orchestra in the movie, it's very clearly like early
Synthestra.
90s synth. Synth orchestral instruments. So that part I get, but
yeah, me too. I mean, I like that cheesy stuff, but
but it's definitely flew a lot more in 1992 than 1999.
Yep.
So, well, if there's something else, we should jump into the movie itself, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Some good stuff.
Jinx.
But first, let's take a look at the back of the VHS.
As a family welcomes their new members into the world, a pair of twin dragon boys, their celebration is halted by a criminal who rips them apart. Now, these brothers are sent on completely separate paths in life, but there's a bond between these twins that's stronger than people understand, and life finds a way to bring them back together. John Ma is a world-renowned musician that is preparing for his first major conducting role in Hong Kong, while his brother Boomer, a streetwise car mechanic, has gotten tied up with the mob. While on the run, Boomer bumps into a very familiar face, and things get complicated when these twins have to fill each other's shoes. Jackie Chan stars alongside Jackie Chan in an action-adventure jam-packed with stars and stunts, directed by Tsui Hark and Ringo Lam, and co-starring Maggie Cheung, Nina Lee Chi, Teddy Robin, and a slew of Hong Kong cinema legends. Two Chans are better than one in Twin Dragons.
So the movie starts with exactly what you would think of the hospital where the two twins were born and then get separated through some crazy twist of fate.
Yeah. And it's all in black and white, the opening, which is kind of fun in both versions of the movie.
So whenever I first was watching it, I was thinking, that feels like a very Hong Kong-y movie thing to do. Like, oh, it's in the past, so it's all black and white. And also they say like 26 years ago or something, and I'm sorry, Jackie, you look great, but you don't look like you're 26.
Nice. I didn't notice that. That's funny. I did notice that in the Hong Kong version, the first thing they really say about the kids is, oh, they have your father's nose, and they like
his
do
big
this.
nose.
Yeah, so they all have big noses. Yeah,
they do like a joke on Jackie, which I thought was great.
On his nickname, that's great.
That seems like a very kind of inside the Hong Kong cinema world. Making jokes about his big nose.
It's cool. There's a real sort of like a John Woo flavor to the opening of the movie in the hospital, because we find out that there's this criminal that's I think he's handcuffed to a hospital stretcher or something, and he quickly kind of breaks free, and there's some shooting up in the hospital hallways, and just the kind of how kinetic it feels and the rhythm and pacing of it really feels like an early 90s, John Woo.
No, it totally does. Like, it feels like that scene, it even looks kind of weirdly overexposed, like hard boiled. Like looks like a little off. So
I do really enjoy in the dub of this film when the guy busts into the room and says, "Give me that baby!" It's really funny.
It's so great.
No, there's a lot of great dubs. Yeah, the dub in this is a lot of fun because it's a lot of like anime folks from the 90s. So you'll recognize some voices. I should have taken the time to see if I could pick out who did who, but the one name that I recognized immediately was Wendy Lee, who did the voice of Faye Valentine in Cowboy Bebop.
Nice.
But there's also a few other people, a few other connections there too.
Cool.
Thank you to voicechasers.com.
Oh, nice. Now, was she the voice of Barbara or?
I don't know.
Or
I think
Tammy.
I think she was Barbara, because I know with I think it's Tammy has a more like Asian-y sounding voice, so I hope it's an Asian actress doing it. But whatever.
Well, that's funny about the dub too, because it sounds like very anime, very clear voices, and then Jackie dubs his own voice in the middle of it all, which is really funny. I think it's really good. I'm glad that they did it, but it's very funny to hear him next to some of these like storied voice actors.
Yeah.
It's always funny watching dubbed Jackie Chan movies whenever it's not Jackie dubbing it, because like I know what Jackie Chan sounds like when he speaks English, so
yeah, they strangely feel like unauthorized or something. And I don't know if that's just now in retrospect, because most of the more big budget dubs do feature Jackie's voice, but yeah, I don't know. I think it was it's hard to imagine like this being released theatrically if you don't have Jackie Chan's voice on the English soundtrack.
Yeah, especially, you know, with this coming out in what we said 99. So this is when everybody's still kind of riding high on wanting to see more Jackie Chan films. And actually I feel like this didn't do that great when they release it here in the States, but still like everybody seeing this Jackie Chan film and not hearing his voice would have been like, what the hell?
Right. Yeah, this probably kind of marks the tail end of the like the Jackie boom as far as like, you know, theatrical box office performance.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, this guy steals the baby and gets a cool like jump out the window with the baby, and somehow the baby gets on like a wheelchair and the wheelchair gets pushed down a hill. It's very like almost like Looney Tunes-y.
Yeah.
But the baby gets picked up. This baby gets picked up by a drunk woman that's stumbling through the park. And I love in the next shot with her whenever she's coming out of like a grocery store, and you see inside of the baby's inside of the stroller, there's a Johnny Walker Red label right next to his head.
Yeah. There's the liquor bottles in there. Equally as important.
Exactly. Gotta keep those safe.
You don't want those to break either.
And we see like a little snippets of them growing up. I'm trying to keep track of the names in both versions because it's Boomer and John Ma in the Dimension dub.
Yeah.
And in the original audio version, it's Bakmin and Ma Yao.
Ma Yao, yeah. Which I guess Bachman to Boomer is just like a lip sync thing, I guess, because it's just kind of weird.
Though Boomer is a cool name. Soft spot for Boomer.
It's great. And I mean, the same like we were talking about with Tyson versus Tarzan. I think it's pretty smart that they went with those names.
And also there's a woman named Tong Sum in the original version that becomes Tammy.
Yep.
Which it's just funny. It just becomes Tammy. Although Barbara is the same in both, which I was kind of surprised to see when I watched the non-dubbed one.
Yeah, a lot of R's in Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara.
So yeah, these two young men grow up in very different lives, and what you see is that Ma, he ends up being a concert pianist and has a very fruitful upbringing, it seems. And for Boomer, he's like a car mechanic, and he was kind of a troublesome child. And you find out that his mother died. They don't really go into that, but you just see like the dichotomy between the two men that look exactly the same.
Yeah. In my notes, I just wrote down Music Jackie and Crime Jackie.
Yeah, there we go.
That's great. I also like that they set up this kind of like E.T. connection early on in the movie, which is cool. They pay it off in a really fun way by the end.
Yeah, I was glad to see
into that a little bit. And I mean, I know we've all heard, I didn't look into it too much, but I mean, we've heard of...
Oh, you mean like in real life between twins?
Yeah, twins can experience like, some people say they have like a rapport or telepathy where if somebody's experienced something, they can feel maybe like an empath where they feel that emotion or stuff like that. But never have I heard of anybody actually physically, reacting to a movement from another twin. But who knows? I think it's
Jackie
really
gets
cool.
away with a close call in the mechanic shop where he's like his fingers are moving like it's on a piano keyboard like his twin, and he ends up like tapping on this girl's butt and she turns around, but the staging of the scene is really weird.
It's really
great. She looks down at Tyson, who absolutely could not have done it.
But then Tyson does like he waves his hand, but he does like his fingers in the same way that Jackie was tapping.
Yeah. Totally.
It's great.
And it's funny too because the boyfriend that's the aggressor here is played by Mars.
Oh man!
Oh,
wow!
Okay.
I totally missed that.
I was thinking it had to be someone, someone famous.
Yeah, he shows up right there, and then really shortly after that, when they kind of ambush them at the dinner table.
That's fun.
Yeah, really cool.
So the next scene, we get to see this crime boss that kind of becomes a kind of a recurring villain throughout this first little bit of the movie. And again, we've had a lot of these like evil guy parties in these movies, which I always appreciate. And the entertainment is Maggie Cheung, who's up there singing as Barbara. And Maggie Cheung's like the most beautiful woman in the universe. And
yeah, she's just incredible.
Even with the blue wig.
Yeah,
makes her look cooler.
Also, one of the henchmen here is Johnny Wang, who we saw in we've seen him in a lot of movies, but
in our Venom.
Yeah, he was in the
movies.
Venom Mob stuff. He was Iron Cloak in Kid with the Golden Arm.
Yeah, shout out to our Shaw Brothers fans.
Yeah. and there was even one bit there in this scene whenever Jackie gets in a fight with these guys, where in the subtitle version, Jackie like flips his jacket down to stop him from smashing like glass over him, and he says like iron cloth or something like that. And I was thinking now that might just be a coincidence, but that's still kind of a cool connection.
Yeah, that's probably is like a cool little nod. There's one shot that I really like kind of early on in this sequence that uses, I think it's called a split diopter, that like filter on the lens where you can have the foreground and the background in focus, and you have Maggie's like sparkly blue heel in the it's a really cool,
that's a really cool shot,
manga looking shot. It's awesome.
There's a funny little beat here when they're kind of coming in, and Tyson is looking at Maggie Cheung, Barbara, and he says to Boomer, "Doesn't she look like Maradona?" And I think, he's like, and Boomer's like, "Maradona's a soccer player," instead of Madonna. I thought that was really funny.
What do you think? She looks like Maradona, doesn't she? Maradona plays soccer. You mean Madonna, don't you? Oh, yeah, right.
So they quickly get in over their heads. So they're trying to get in there and save her because Tyson says that's his girl. And he's relying heavily on Boomer as a fighter here. So they don't realize that every guy in the club is Wing, the gang leader. Those are all his men. So everybody stands up and the fight ensues. It's really, really good. I
love when the gang leader starts singing along on the mic.
Yeah, sure. And actually the song that she's singing is like the kind of like the main theme of the Hong Kong version. And that'll come back later in the film. That's actually cut from the US version. So if you're watching the US version and you're familiar with that song, hearing it the way they edit it, because they edit like a chunk of the song out, and it's like kind of jarring if you're familiar with the song.
Right.
Among the goons, we also see the Lai brothers, Benny and Rocky, are among some of the guys that are fighting in this scene. So that's kind of cool seeing Jackie's homies in here.
Yeah, and it's just it's one of these great one person against a giant group of people in a club, like Kill Bill or something.
Yep, and it's like I was saying before, Jackie's really handling it. It's not like he's just trying to survive against all these dudes. Although there is a bit of that too. He does have a moment where everybody piles on him like Looney Tunes and they're all just pummeling him.
And like Looney Tunes, he sneaks some out somehow. It's like watching from the outside. There's a I don't know if it's fair to say, but maybe there's a little less like resourcefulness choreography in the movie as a whole, but this sequence has a lot of cool uses of the environment, especially Jackie using a microphone and cable as like a nunchuck, and then like screaming into the microphone to have it like feedback in this guy's ear.
And he picks up one of like the TVs that's showing like the lyrics for karaoke and throws it at a guy.
Yeah, totally. And there's also just some great Jackie kicks in this sequence. There's like a passage when he like jumps through this. I think he jumps through a speaker or something, and then there's just this like barrage of awesome kicks.
Yeah, really great. And there's a lot of kind of crane camera work to make everything seem a lot more dynamic in the fights. Actually, throughout the film, I don't know if it was just me or whatever, but I just noticed like, wow, there's a lot more like kind of sweeping crane like work for not only the fighting but some of the dramatic scenes. I think it looks
I wonder
really
if
cool.
if that's also in the spirit of trying to kind of like overtly, I don't know, show what Hong Kong directors can do. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
sure.
This is to benefit that guild or that union or whatever. I mean, maybe in that split diopter shot and all this stuff there could have been like a conscious effort to really try to kind of pack every sequence in with, some kind of directing or camera fireworks or something.
So at the end of this short scene, they are actually almost successful. They've got everybody held up at gunpoint, but Tyson really wants to prove himself. He's feeling kind of shown up by Boomer, and he takes the gun away from him, but he doesn't understand that it's actually a fake gun. And once that happens,
so it's like split apart.
Yeah, things start to fall apart for them. And they end up getting captured by Wing, and he's like ready to break their legs. It's pretty rough. And what ends up happening though is Tyson kind of hustles his way out of it, because Wing is like kind of like this race car driver, I guess. And he challenges him to a race. That doesn't really come into play too much, but he says, yeah, we'll race you for $300,000. And he's like, oh, okay, you guys have like one more day to live, so we'll meet for the race. And they're able to weasel out of the beating that they were going to get.
And then when they get outside, they meet back up with Barbara, who that's whatever Boomer realizes that Tyson doesn't actually know her.
Right.
And they kind of go there. They kind of leave the scene, and we get to see John Ma show up. Get to see other Jackie, because apparently he has a concert or something there. Get a little more of that like psychic link stuff, which it makes for a fun. It has a really great payoff later, but it does seem kind of like a kind of inconsistent, like what one person feels and the other person doesn't.
Right, or sort of like when the link is active.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, so the reason that they're kind of brought together is because Tyson is trying to get a car to use in the race because his car's a beater. And the concierge, it seems like they've done this before where he's let him use the car. They're able to finagle a car to race with. And actually, this is another scene that's cut out of the US version. They're kind of trying to blackmail this concierge with like a photo of him with another woman. And that kind of pisses him off, but he reluctantly accepts. So in the midst of that, they're like kind of in like the main driveway of the hotel, and they end up bumping. Well, yeah, they all end up.
Tyson's the first one to kind of.
Yeah, Tyson's the person that sees them and is like, "What are you doing in that big nice car? Like, are you messing around?" And he's like, "I don't know you. Sorry."
But then as he's entering and as Boomer's trying to leave, they bump shoulders and they look at each other and they kind of just do this double take. And that's a thing where you would think any person would be like, whoa, wait,
just a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like, because then John Ma gets like the hotel people that are like, oh, you need to go to your room. And the Crime Jackie says like, oh, there's not a mirror there, huh?
Yeah.
So
that's a fun little. That'd be a great GIF, by the way. When
him just reaching
Jackie's
out,
trying to like reach out to see if there's a mirror.
Yeah.
It's really nice that they kind of get interrupted in this moment. Even it's not what you're expecting though, because you kind of want these guys to connect almost immediately.
Yeah, and so John Ma makes his way up to his hotel room where a man is waiting for him with his daughter, and both of these people are kind of. So Tammy Tong-sung is a main character in the film, and we've seen her in Pedicab Driver, and I don't remember if we...
actress.
Yeah, Nina Lichi. And
Nina Lichi.
I don't remember if we mentioned this in the last podcast, but did we reveal that that's actually Jet Li's wife?
Oh, yeah, I think we did.
Oh,
maybe.
Okay.
I don't remember that, but
all right.
we probably
so
did.
Lee,
I don't remember a lot of things.
And her name is from Jet Li.
The Lee is from Jet Li. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you
and,
go.
She's very pretty.
She's awesome in
yeah.
this movie.
And she's a great kind of straight man to like the comedy happening around her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's
totally.
Really good.
It's like I think what folks might remember is the contrast between John Ma and Boomer, but it's really the two leading ladies have this incredible contrast as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think Maggie Cheung and Nina Ricci kind of make the movie work. Really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because they're like two different kinds of straight man to the two different kind of silliness of Jackie.
And without like giving it all away, it's kind of cool to see how the matching of those four characters really ends up working.
Yeah. So her father here is played by Chor Yun. So he was like the Weasley crime boss in Police Story.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking he had to be someone because he's in this scene and doesn't appear almost all in the rest of the movie. So I was thinking he has to be someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's almost like anyone that talks in Twin Dragons is, it's a cameo of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and any shot that seems like a little longer than it should be on just a random like set of people, you can almost bet that
pause for applause.
Yeah, whether you knew who the people were or not, these people were meant to be on camera, and they're probably an important cameo for the audience.
So Tyson and Boomer are trying to get away, or they're trying to leave the country to go to like to do this race thing, and I think they say Macau is where it is.
Yeah,
but it turns out it's all set up so they can just kidnap the two of them or something. I don't really exactly remember. What I do remember is that it turns into a 6 speedboat race.
Nice.
This is awesome.
And here we get
it almost seems like there isn't room in this movie for like a boat sequence, but it's incredible, and it's not spare no expense.
Yeah,
I think here we get another small cameo too. So the guy that wrangles the boat for them and ends up double crossing them is played by Dennis Chan, and I actually remember him from the Jean-Claude Van Damme film Kickboxer. He's like his master in Kickboxer. I was like, whoa, wait a second.
That's funny.
And actually, that I mentioned that Tsui Hark would go on to do like a couple of Jean-Claude Van Damme films in the US, including that horrible one with Dennis Rodman, Double Impact, I think it's called. Oh man. All I remember from that, and I don't even know if this is a correct memory or not, is them jumping out of an airplane with snowboards on. I don't. Jeez, that could be completely wrong.
Kind of
but
incredible,
whatever.
Knockoff, it looks like, is the with Jean-Claude Van Damme, directed by Tsui Hark.
What's Double Impact? I can't.
It's Double Team. Double Team is the Tsui Hark. So he did more than one.
Okay.
Yeah, Knockoff is actually like that's funny too because Knockoff is like a double. It's like it's in Hong Kong, so it's like knockoff, but it's also knockoff.
It's
like
a knockoff. Yeah,
it's so stupid. All right.
I do like how in the speedboat sequence, we kind of revisit the twins link, and so we see John Ma, who's supposed to be in like the hotel restaurant with Tammy, and he's not feeling too good, and he's even explaining it as though it's like he's seasick on a boat. But then this turns into like a fun little gag where like he can't keep his balance and he's like throwing his water and poor Tammy's getting all wet. And, pretty embarrassed by the whole thing.
Like moving all around and stuff, which that has a cool payoff later too, which that's like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, so can't wait to get to that.
Okay, awesome.
That the boat gets of course, like, you know, it's a Jackie Chan movie, so the boat gets on land and like scrapes against the ground, and the crime boss gets out to try to stop them, and he gets hit by a truck, and he like literally ping pongs back and forth like it's a Wong Jing movie.
Yep.
Like this exact scene could have been in Future Cops, and it wouldn't have blinked an eye.
Yep.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally.
It's so goofy.
It might be my favorite stunt in the film. I don't know.
It's a good one.
But that
it
puts
is almost
both of
like
them
this,
in the hospital. Yeah.
it's kind of like this time capsule of 1991, 92 Hong Kong cinema. There's a little bit of every kind of movie here. Like we talked about the opening with almost like a John Woo, gun fu sort of thing. We have a lot of mistaken identity, comedy, hijinks. And then, that little moment with like farcical physics, and then we have gritty act. We kind of have it all here. I'm not sure how exactly it works, but I feel like it really does all work together.
So Tyson and Wing are in the hospital now because of the accident. So like, he slid up and then all these cars slammed into the boat and he got hurt. And the hospital they're in is actually like under like paid protection by Wing's gang. So they kind of get caught up in that. But then they cut over to Wing, who's in like a full body cast, and all of his goons are kind of like, I don't know, cheering for him to get better or something. And you see the doctor here, and the doctor is Lau Gar Long.
It's Lau Gar.
Yeah. Because when I
He's
first was
basically
watching,
the only guy without sunglasses.
Yeah. When I first watched that, I was thinking, because in the Dimension dub, this scene's pretty short, which is, honestly, it's not necessarily funnier or better. I like that it's kind of the short scene of the doctor just trying to work on him while he's in this crazy full body cast and then cuts away. But I was thinking, I feel like I recognize the doctor. And then when I went back, I was like, oh, that's Lau Gar Long.
Yeah, you just don't picture him in like modern day garb
he's not wearing like a kung fu master outfit, so
I kind of wonder if Jackie knew about this sequence at all. I mean, they definitely didn't need him to shoot this stuff because sort of famously they had a pretty big falling out in the making of Drunken Master 2, which would have been a year or so or earlier than this. So I could see this happening kind of on the sly. Jackie doesn't need to know this scene's being shot.
It's right around, I think Drunken Master 2 is a little after that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
either way,
Drunken Master 2 is after this.
Yeah.
Okay, scratch that then.
93 or 94. Anyways,
yeah, 94
I
is when Drunken Master 2 came out. So
okay. It's still
things
a
went
great
south
scene.
really fast.
And the icing on the cake in this scene is that, like, kind of like the second or third boss of the gang kind of interrupts the doctor and says that they have a spiritual healer that they've this is actually cut from the from the US version,
from the American version.
Yeah. And when you see who it is, it's actually Wong Jing, and this is like ridiculous. I feel like
this awesome hammy performance. It's so good.
Wong Jing is like embodying his film's work in one scene.
That's
so
awesome.
He's like really hamming it up. He's making all this noise, waving his hands around, and it goes on for a little longer than it should, really. But Lau Gar Long at the same time acknowledges this and gives you a more familiar Lau Gar Long by slamming him into the wall.
Yeah,
and then
striking an awesome pose.
Yeah, Wong Jing actually gets stamped into the wall like a cartoon.
Which again feels like something from a Wong Jing movie, so it's just funny that it just turns into that for a second. So I can completely understand why they cut that, but it's a really fun scene.
It's great,
right? Totally.
Yeah, because it would be super random for an American audience because they wouldn't get who the guy is, and it's just so weird.
So after this, we get introduced to kind of like a minor villain throughout the middle part of this movie, which is Tammy's boyfriend, Rocky, who kind of interrupts a rehearsal session where Tammy's in the audience. And I love that John Ma is saying, like, there needs to be more passion, more, emotion behind it. And Rocky throws like a chair at him. He's like, that's what I'm talking about.
That's the feeling I'm talking about. But no cheers. That's one.
Yeah, it's great. It's cool. I love seeing this concert hall location in so much of the movie, and the fact that you either have an orchestra worth of extras or might actually be an orchestra that's cameoing in the movie. But
I think it's a little bit of both, because this is what I was thinking of when I was saying that the camera will hold on certain people. So when they're actually showing these different players play, these are also a bunch of cameos.
Oh, cool.
And one of
the like timpanist was somebody.
Yeah, that's actually Lau Gar Wing.
Oh, very cool.
Dude, awesome.
The other one that's really good that you barely see is one of the guys playing like the big tubas is actually Hark on Fong.
Huh.
Dude, what?
Yeah. He's wearing a white shirt. You'll see him. But like a lot of the other people too are
Oh my gosh, I totally
industry folks that maybe we don't recognize as well. But a lot of directors and writers are actually in the orchestra too, which is really funny.
There's also some gorgeous like high cinema shots of Tammy just sitting in the audience, and she's like the only person sitting in these theater seats, and there's this like blue light. It's really moody and really some beautiful freeze frames there.
I just scrub back through, and you're totally right. That is Harkon Fook. That's so random.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've got to scrub too.
It's really funny. I'll actually
awesome.
Screenshot it and add it to the post. I could almost do that with all the cameos that I found, but actually maybe that might be a good idea.
Oh my gosh, I just yeah, he's playing this little euphonium.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's a shot where he's standing up reacting to Rocky smashing stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
Rocky's
right.
outfit is amazing. I mean, it's almost like what's his name?
Village
that
People?
Blackie co-played in Wheels on Meals, the biker gang.
Oh,
Blackie.
oh,
Blackie
yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, there's almost kind of like there's one sort of character and costume type for the thug that we see in like Hong Kong movies of this time. But yeah, the fact that he trashes a grand piano or the shell of a grand piano, that's
It hurts a little bit.
that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, it's
very
messed
punk
up.
rock.
Like seeing those Kuntaks getting destroyed in the last 2 episodes.
Oh man, yeah.
And actually, Rocky himself is played by Jamie Luck, who we saw in Rumble in the Bronx, and that's the driver that I mentioned was actually one of the Tiananmen Tigers in Purple Adventures.
Yeah.
So he gets a much meatier cameo in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a blast.
Yeah, especially in this following scene. So now we kind of playing around with both Jackies in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
So Ma and Tammy are in a restaurant, but in the booth next to them is Barbara and Boomer. And the waiter is actually really funny. I actually thought maybe he was a cameo too, just in how they played him up in this
He
scene.
seems like he's got to be somebody. I didn't recognize him. But.
He's very cartoony looking, and he's kind of like he's like trying to make sense of the situation because he notices that they both look the same. Mm-hmm. But anyways,
this is where I think there's some of the most clever kind of approach to the twins as far as a special effect. We kind of hide these cuts by like the waiter's pants kind of filling the frame, his black pants.
Yeah.
And it's done in a really, really cool way. And it's, but Jackie's really selling most of it with his acting here. They really do feel like two extremely different guys.
And actually, even in the dub, Jackie kind of plays both characters a little differently.
He definitely does.
Yeah. John Ma's kind of this softer, more polite, and actually a thing that they add for the US version is Boomer has this kind of quirk where he kind of crumples up his face and like
snorts.
Tightens his pants or something, and they add this snort to the American version that I actually think works really well. It's cool.
There's also a great shot where the seam is in the very center of the frame, and it's kind of covered by the sort of like railing or the divider between the two tables.
Yeah,
it looks really good. I think.
So what ends up happening here is that Rocky ends up showing up, and he mistakes Boomer for John Ma, and actually Tammy also does. So she's trying to protect who she thinks is John Ma, and then Boomer actually starts to defend himself, and she's like, what? And she like passes out, and he ends up kind of, he doesn't want to beat up Rocky, but he's kind of forced to because Rocky won't stop his aggression. I actually think that this is a really cool way to show Boomer's strength too, and it actually makes for some kind of fun action choreography.
Yeah, for sure.
In a mall too, which is always, we've said it so many times.
Yeah, I was definitely reminded of this scene when we had some of our awesome mall stuff in Mr. Nice Guy.
Yep.
And also, at the back of Eddie's jacket has a Iron Maiden cover
Oh,
on
yeah.
it.
That's so
Nice.
cool. Wait, on Blackie Co's jacket, what band did you have? Slayer on the back of his?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Oh.
I'm
Have to
trying to
look.
remember.
I do not remember. That was a
Ah,
while ago when we did that episode.
yeah, I'll have to go back.
But yeah, this leads to a whole fight in the mall between the two of them.
Again, it's kind of an example of us getting every kind of Hong Kong film of this period. I almost think that every action sequence feels like this great surprise. You're not expecting this big speedboat chase. I don't think, expecting, a really inventive mall sequence. And that's not even getting into some of the amazing action sequences towards the end of the movie.
So, just like I said, how the Tammy kind of confused Boomer for John, the same happens with Barbara. So Barbara ends up jumping in the car with John Ma, thinking that he's Boomer, and she's kind of it's funny. Ma is very tolerant of all these interactions with these, kind of
Yeah,
These
rude
complete
people.
strangers that are just getting in cars with him. And
Yeah, and like slapping his butt and, asking for rides and stuff. So what ends up happening here is they kind of get to go on an impromptu date. So he takes her to the concert hall and starts playing music, and she doesn't believe him at first. And he starts playing and she's shocked. She's shocked so much, she's like, this has to be fake. So she asks him to stop randomly, and he stops, and then
Maggie
he starts
is
playing again.
amazing in this scene. It's like, yeah, I don't know. She's so all in, and it's really, I don't know. It's just charming and super, super convincing. And
Yeah.
also, I've got to say, it's knowing a little bit of the history that's going on, and maybe it's kind of coloring the way I watch it, but you really can feel this palpable chemistry with Jackie and Maggie. It's kind of amazing.
And this is another instance where they're playing more recognizable pieces in the Hong Kong version.
Right.
And I looked those up, actually. The Hong Kong version, when Barbara mentions Beethoven in the dialogue, he starts to play Ode to Joy. And then following that, he starts to play Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1. Actually, for me, I actually recognize that song. I mean, obviously, everybody recognizes it when they hear it, but there's this old arcade game called City Connection where you're racing as a little Honda City car, and the soundtrack is completely like an arrangement of Tchaikovsky's.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Concerto No. 1. It's really fun. It's from Jalico. It's a cool game, and I don't know.
I'll have to check that.
I'll
Yep.
play a little clip of it.
Isn't this when the Hong Kong version kind of cuts into almost like a dream sequence? or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. It turns into like almost like a little music video almost of Barbara.
Almost like a Bollywood sort of
It
breakaway.
totally
That's
felt like
so-
a Bollywood.
video.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's
We're
exactly
like
what I thought
exactly
too.
on the same wavelength right now.
Because they're in
it's
like
great.
different outfits.
That's awesome.
She's singing about like them together, and that's what you're saying before. That's kind of it's like a reprisal almost of the song she was singing before, right? Isn't that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like standing up in front of the stage and singing in front of everyone. Yeah, it's a total Bollywood thing. Although the outfits aren't quite as crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And the sequence isn't as crazy either.
And
Yeah.
and it's funny because they're having a really sweet moment, but Boomer and Tammy
Oh man,
are
Boomer and Tammy.
are getting it on, and that
Yeah, we
and
get-
that
we
that
get
gets
super
translated
PG-13.
to John Ma like gently kissing Barbara while Boomer's literally like taking his shirt off and hopping on the bed. It's so goofy. So whenever they're back at the hotel, we see Rocky is running through the halls trying to chase after one of the Jackies, and he runs into John Ma, and you think he's gonna go and beat him up, but instead he does the classic kung fu movie. He gets down on his knees and begs to be his Sifu.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's an awesome beat. I kind of wish it had stayed in the American version, even if it would have
Yeah.
kind of been confusing for the
Yeah,
audience.
but yeah, it's a very, with us, since we watch all these kung fu movies, it's a very noticeable trope. But if you weren't, RZA or something, then I can see you watching this and being like,
perfect.
what? Oh, okay, sure. And yeah, and John Ma, of course, isn't the kung fu master, so he's like, okay, well, you gotta get a piano and practice at it every day. He's like, I've never heard of that kung fu before.
Yeah,
also, there's one of the
really great.
there's a member of the hotel staff that's another cameo, Philip Chan.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
And-
you called that out earlier. right?
I actually didn't, but
Oh, okay.
he was in. I think he's in Super Cop actually.
Yeah, he is
which
in Super Cop, and I'm trying to think if we've encountered him.
That's the only
in
one
the show
because I only
before.
picture him with like a police officer's uniform on. So I feel like he was some type of sergeant or something in Super Cop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. I think he's in one of the Lucky Stars movies, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I'm sure he will. So now this is like my favorite scene in the movie, because this is finally
so
whenever both Jackies go to the bathroom at the same time and finally realize that they're identical. They look exactly the same. And they don't say at this point that they realize that they're brothers or that they should be like brothers, but I love it because they're not just like, you look like me. They're like, oh, were you on a boat the other day? Okay, that explains it. And like, I love that they figure out what happened and like why it is that the people are going after them and getting confused. Because I feel like in a lot of movies like this, it'll just kind of keep being confused. But I like that they immediately figure it all out.
I almost think they kind of acknowledge like, hey, we just got to keep this fast and tight so we can keep the movie going.
Keep this at a cool 90.
Yeah,
That's
let's not
awesome.
dwell on all these details and let's not like really focus on how these guys' lives have just changed by realizing this.
Yeah.
Let's just keep moving.
Yeah. It's like that scene
It's
like that scene in Looper whenever he's like, look, don't worry, we could sit here all day with charts and stuff, but it just
In the diner?
Yeah, in the diner. He's like, look, it's time travel, it's just how it works. We have bigger things to deal with.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah,
This is probably the most overt, sort of compositing effect sequence, and this is maybe the sequence that people point to when they're critical of the special effects. I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at it in a different context.
I don't know. I think so.
I think it's awesome, especially compared to Hong Kong films of this period. I've never seen anything like this in a Hong Kong movie.
Yeah, and I think that if you're like me, I was probably watching it like on a VHS tape, so I think it would work a lot better. So when you're watching it at a higher fidelity, you do see the seams on some of the special effects, and I do enjoy it, but I can see how somebody that wasn't as in love with all this stuff as we are would be critical of it.
That's a good point. Yeah, if it's one element, kind of like on a growing hill of stuff, that's different.
Yeah, totally. So basically all of these kind of intertwining mistakes between identity here are leading up to a moment where John has to perform in front of it with his orchestra, and Boomer ends up becoming the guy on stage. And
yeah, which is just terrific.
It's
also
great.
like from the bathroom scene on, we kind of separate the couples that we now feel like really should be together, and that's a really cool kind of tension from this part of the movie.
Yeah, the whole situation for John's side is that he's caught up in this kind of scam that Wing's gang has set up. They're like, we know you're a good driver, so we want you to help us with your driving. And what you find out is that they want to have him help them bust out their boss or a boss. And it's like a police escorted like caravan with like a prison bus. So in the middle of this situation where Boomer's on stage, John's like in this kind of high-speed chase. Yeah, my favorite part of the sequence is obviously Boomer gets onto the pedestal to start the orchestra up. and he kind of stumbles backwards and his arms wave instinctively, and then the orchestra starts to play. And he realizes
this is such a fun scene.
Yeah,
man.
the power that he has behind this. So he starts to just, instead of just waving his arm, he's actually just mimicking, like, falling backwards the whole time, which is great.
Yeah.
And not
this
only
is kind of what every kid dreamt of when
Yes.
they went on their first field trip to the orchestra. It's like, oh wow, if you wave that little stick, then they play stuff. It's really fun.
It's great.
Yeah, so he's kind of falling backwards off the stage and then out of the auditorium. And this leads us to another cameo. So Eric Sang is actually on the phone and Boomer wants to use it. And he's like, oh, he recognizes Boomer as John Ma. He like points at him.
I love that cameo. So I actually recognize that cameo too. That was nice.
Yeah, it's really good.
That's awesome.
So he tries to call John, and John's in the middle of like a firefight. And he's like, oh, I'm in trouble too. He's like, I'm in trouble. How can I do this? And he's like, just swing your arms around. He's like, all right.
It's great too that it's both of these characters are being tested and are thrown way out of their comfort zones, and also it's such different kinds of sequences too. Whether it's Tsui Hark or Ringo, I almost suspect that Tsui Hark is doing the orchestra stuff and Ringo Lam is doing the car action stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
Could be wrong. It's awesome how well these two different sequences pair against each other. And once again, spare no expense. This doesn't feel like a compromised car. I mean, we have some like car explosions and the whole works.
There's a really crazy...
In the orchestra, we have a pretty packed audience. So it's... I don't know. Twin Dragons really goes for it.
Yeah, there's a really crazy stunt where the bus that he's driving smashes into a semi, and you see like the cab of the semi get crumpled. It looks really crazy. And then there's like a whole sequence where the bus is like on two wheels, like tilted. That looks really cool too. So in the end, Boomer kind of finds his groove on the stage, and he's doing like kung fu moves. And actually, it's kind of the situation where John's kind of crazy car chase and all the flipping around that he's doing on the bus translates to Boomer's movements when he's orchestrating.
He's doing like he's turning the wheel really fast with the baton.
What's cool? He's also listening on the radio to a live broadcast of the concert, which is like a brilliant idea. And it kind of brings it all together.
So that ends up happening. What ends up happening here is the bus like explodes and flies into a river, and that kind of makes Boomer do like a flip off the stage, and that ends the concert, and everybody just erupts in applause. And John is able to make an escape from his like dangerous situation.
And this, of course, leads to more hijinks because the two of them both go to the same hotel room and kind of like, it's funny, they kind of debrief, kind of figure out like what are they going to do next? How are they going to come clean or and everything like that. And that leads to the bath scene, right?
Yeah.
It's like classic, almost like screwball comedy situation where like...
Yeah, totally. It's sort of like invited two girls to the dance, like times two. Literally, I guess.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah. And this I remember in the American version of the trailer, like this featuring big time.
Yeah.
Or at least when the soapy sud Jackie pokes his head out. Oh man.
They all end up getting into the bathtub. Tammy, Boomer, and John. And the illusion, actually, she's like very tolerant of what's going on too. So like you think that
maybe overly
some other
tolerant.
person would just be like, "What? No, this something weird's happening right now. Like, how'd you put your clothes on so quickly?"
Yeah.
But they really milk it. It's pretty great. After all of this, Barbara shows up too, and so John's like, this is enough. I can't deal with this anymore. So he finally like reveals to them what's going on, and they both pass out.
Yeah.
So now following this, there's like a whole running gag of everyone passing out.
Whenever they see the two of them together.
See,
which is awesome.
I'm seeing double here. 4 Jackies.
4 Krusties.
Yeah,
that's great.
Awesome. I love you guys. Yeah. Also, you get some cool shots of whoever the stand-in was for Jackie. And I don't know that information. I'm not sure who.
So there's a shot
stand-in
in
for
the
the Devils.
restaurant where John and Tammy are like moving around the waiter to leave, and actually they use a body double there, and they don't do a face replacement. And I was almost gonna pause it just to see if I could tell who it was. Maybe I'll do that after we record and see. But
Well,
as far as I know,
to
you
figure it
can't
out,
really
I
tell.
will edit it in. So this leads to the final showdown, which is at a Mitsubishi factory. We gotta get there first, but we got to have a showdown at the docks first.
I think that the
sequence at the docks is really awesome.
It's really cool. There's a really like funny thing where they've actually got Tyson like attached to a metal bar on a magnet, and that's like really cartoony too. They're like, "What are you gonna do?" And then the evil boss like turns off the magnet and then turns it on again, which is really funny. Seeing him fall down and then get magnetized back.
I love just seeing this boss with like coat over his shoulders, which is an awesome look. Actually, Tyson was rocking that earlier, and then also the bandage, like the hospital bandage. On
it looks cool.
It's perfect.
And even he's like kind of a cameo too, because he's played by Kirk Wong, and he's like been in a lot of films, and he's also kind of a director from this era as well. So even having him as the boss is kind of a little cameo too.
Yeah. I don't, is this a hot take? I feel like from this like the last 20 minutes of Twin Dragons is like tons stronger than the last 20 minutes of either Rumble or Mr. Nice Guy. Is that crazy?
No, I think so. I mean, the car factory itself is just like, it's too good because it kind of capitalizes on the whole twins in the film too. Cause it's not like this.
Right. Like you couldn't like, cut it out and paste it into a different Jackie Chan film. It's like it's on point for what this movie's all about.
Right.
But the sequence at the dock too, it's like it's really large scale, and I feel like in the finale of Rumble and in Mr. Nice Guy, they're trying to go for this Hollywood blockbuster big scale spectacle. Yeah. And I think they were able to pull it off here in this kind of like all hands on deck Hong Kong production.
And I think for us, this final sequence is about the fighting, where it's like definitely. Rumble and Mr. Nice Guy are cool, like action stunt kind of sequences, but you're not getting the finale fighting that you want from a Jackie Chan film.
So they go to the Mitsubishi factory, and we see three guys playing cards, and
just three
normal
random guys.
Because it was funny because I watched it, I was like, I think that's Tsui Hark, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it's the directors and the producer, Ringo Lam, Tsui Hark, and
Tsui Hark, and I think it's the only time we see Ng Si Yuen on screen,
or
at least so far on the podcast. Tsui Hark is awesome. He's definitely. I love when he's trying to peek at. He's trying to peek at the cards.
They're all trying to look at each other's cards. Even when they get held at gunpoint, you see Tsui Hark looking at Ringo Lam's cards. It's really funny.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, so we talked about Johnny Wang Lungwei, and he's a big part of this final sequence.
Yeah.
But his outfit looks so badass. He's got a sport coat on. He's got one glove on one hand for no reason, really.
It looks cool.
And he's got white tennis shoes on. It looks so early 90s, but also like badass, like gangster at the same time.
He looks
so cool.
He doesn't look like a fighting game character. He looks like a beat 'em up character. Like he'd be walking in Streets of Rage, not Streets of Rage, like Double Dragon or something.
Double Dragon,
walking down the street
for sure. Or like on the box art. Even.
Yeah, guys, hello.
Or the cabinet art. Yeah.
Double Dragon.
Twin Dragon.
Oh,
it all comes together.
That should be the name of the movie, actually. Double Dragon. I'm seeing Double Dragon. What's so awesome about this sequence is you can imagine that it comes from calling in some favors with Mitsubishi. I'm sure most of these sequences involved calling in some favors, but it rivals it definitely rivals the bigger Hollywood productions Jackie's involved in. So I don't know. It's awesome. It has this flavor of kind of DIY shoestring, the action in Twin Dragons, but it's just done at this incredibly high level. And like you were saying, Carlos, it ends up paying off like the whole theme of the film, which is awesome.
Yeah, because you get these super condensed interactions where the gang that they're fighting against still doesn't realize that there are two Jackies here, and
which is so smart.
And there's like, also the way the testing facility is set up is there are these separate rooms. Actually, this is kind of like a beat 'em up, right? Yeah. So
totally.
You've got one Jackie in one room and the other in another, and even Tyson here, who's kind of still in traction but kind of on the run from these gangsters, he'll see Jackie, but it's actually John, and he's like, help me, like he's like, now you're gonna get it, but it actually is like, no, that's the wrong one. So he can't fight, so he's trying
it's cool how
to
like these rooms, they're almost like different atmospheres and stuff. Like one is like fully wet and it's like kind of blue lit, and then we have this other room that's like testing the, I guess, if the cars can withstand heat or something, and it has all these red fire hot coils, and
there's a lot of funny gags of them kind of putting their hands on the car and going ow 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 ow. Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's fun. There's one, it's funny, it's not like a super big stunt, but one of possibly my favorite stunt in this whole movie is whenever Jackie ducks underneath one car that's like up on like a jack or something like that. He walks underneath it, and then he just super smoothly hops over like a concrete barrier through some metal grating and onto the other side of the floor. It's like, it's beautiful. And it's a shame there's no NGs in this movie. There's no outtakes at the end. I would love to see like 3 or 4 times that he hit himself trying to do that before getting it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It is kind of crazy that there are no NGs.
Yeah.
Like,
it seemed like that's the way to do it.
But yeah, that's such I hadn't really been appreciating it, I think, until you were just saying it, Carlos. But the fact that you're still able to hold off the reveal of the two Jackies. I mean, even for Tyson, who's like this main character, but luckily we've kind of had him sidelined in the hospital, and it really works when we finally do get to pay this off. And in the same way that the whole movie is balanced by all these different kinds of different kinds of sequences and scenes and tones even. The whole Mitsubishi sequence is also just full of contrast, not just the rooms, but once we get out of the rooms and we get into kind of the final stage, just some brilliant ideas. And
they end up making their way to a big testing room, and now you've got both Jackies here, Boomer and John. John actually drives in a car, and there's actually some cool stuntmen getting hit by cars. So that's really nice. But when you've got Boomer in the mix, now he's fighting everybody, and we get a lot more, like we were saying before, really stylish Jackie. There's a really cool wired kick where he's jumping out of a car and does a high kick before he lands. That looks really awesome. Great. And all of his sweep kicks are super fast and super precise. You can imagine getting hit by that and just getting knocked out.
His kicks are something to behold in this one.
I love that little moment where he does this wall kick off the side of the car, jumping over the guy's head, and then spins around and kicks. Oh, really great.
There's all these really goofy contraptions too. There's like something where it's like these hoses pulling cars hoods up and down, and they use that in the fighting. So he's like fighting and he puts his head in the trunk and then removes it before the trunk closes on him. There's a bunch of like tools involved in a fight, actually like a beat 'em up as well. Like some of the guys are using wrenches and trying to smash him up, and Johnny Wang Lung Wei is just kind of waiting to get his strikes in, but most of the goons are like doing the kind of typical Jackie, what you would think with a playground set, like leaping between scaffolding and through cars. It's really great.
Yeah, totally.
But this leads to kind of the culmination of the the psychic link stuff in the movie, which is where Boomer, who actually can fight, gets locked behind like in this cage kind of thing, and John Ma, who can't fight, is stuck outside having to deal with the kind of final boss. And so Boomer starts doing like the kung fu moves inside of the cage, and it translates to John doing it.
Yeah, just brilliant. It's like such a satisfying payoff idea.
Yeah, it's really good. Just before that though, I think for me are the two most exciting stunts in the film, and they both involve cars. So there's a car that's like sitting up on a rig, and they release the car so it's kind of barreling towards Jackie, and he leaps up off the ground with enough time to actually leap
and like run
on
over
top of the car, and he runs over it as it passes under him.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a classic sequence.
That's a legendary stunt there. And then
the roll under, is that the other one you're thinking of?
The other one that I want to bring up is there's a car. It's like a crash test line, and so they send a car towards Boomer and Johnny Wang's character. So he gets out of the way, and Jackie actually does kind of like a flip up while the car actually strikes the wall that he's holding on to. That stunt is crazy. And actually
and shot in slow-mo, and you get a great look at Jackie's face. It's like, this is him.
It's so crazy. And there's a really funny bit just after that, because actually Tarzan
Tyson's
he's in the car, and he's like, it looks like he's unconscious, and Boomer's worried that he's dead, but then there's like a PA announcement saying like,
recorded speed of 50 miles per hour, estimated survival rate for passengers with seatbelts 99%.
So he snaps out of it hearing that. He's like, I was wearing a seatbelt, and then he immediately gets knocked out again.
I love that. Yeah, it turns into a PSA for why you should wear a seatbelt.
Yeah, and that actually pays off too.
And then there's a couple of great gifable moments after that. There's the one where Jackie's doing like a repetitive motion of like punching this guy who he has under his arm.
Yes.
And almost has like a classic. I remember that in the trailer. And then there's another sort of like grab for the tools.
Oh, this one's great.
This
is one of the best ones ever. But there's another stunt, I don't know if we called out, that also involves a car. Jackie ends up getting underneath this car that's like hoisted up, and the guys like kick out the supports of it, and it comes crashing down on the ground as he's like rolling away from it. It just makes it in the nick of time again. And geez, man, it's amazing.
Right, so finally we get this that we were talking about, where the twin telepathy kind of gives John the upper hand against Johnny Wang Lungwei. And the final thing is that the boss, he gets kind of trapped in that same situation. So he once Boomer and John get out, he kind of holds him at gunpoint, and they're kind of doing the Four Crusties thing where they're like standing with each other. And what they end up doing is like a tag move where they flip him into the car behind them and then run that car into the crash wall. And they don't show the outcome of it, but you hear the PA announcement.
Estimated survival rate of passenger without seatbelt 0%. Please replace test dummy.
Which is great because it's kind of like this PSA quality to it.
Right, like Matthew said.
To come up into the back. Also, I love in this subtitle when they do the two-person reveal, he says, 2 persons! That's great.
Yeah, really good.
And then a hard cut to a wedding. Like it's like not even like a 3 months or 6 months later or anything like that. It's just hard cut. And we're at a wedding, which it's one of those things that happens in movies where there's multiple weddings all happening at the same time. And we get another great cameo that I didn't know until Carlos pointed out, that the priest,
maybe one of the best,
the priest standing up at the at the altar is played by John Woo.
I almost get the sense that either Ringo or Choi is maybe kind of influenced or inspired or intimidated by this, because there's some really beautiful like long lens scenes of just the wedding party and stuff that just seem to maybe have a little bit more tender care than you'd expect in this sequence. I also love that we have a proper ending. It is a totally abrupt turn, like you're saying, but it's awesome that we have some kind of ending sequence and not just a frizz-a-frama.
So we see that it's Boomer saying that like he's gonna like not go to the wedding or is gonna be late or something, and then the whole party goes out and to find him, chases him down, and he sees the two of them standing next to each other. And I love that, right? Like the father had said earlier to the wife, don't faint whenever you see the other, our long lost son, and then whenever they see him, that he faints.
Yeah, that's great.
And then at the end, they're like, well, which one am I getting married to? Which one are you getting married to?
Now what do we do?
It doesn't make any difference.
You have to imagine the paparazzi having a field day here. It's like everyone dressed for a wedding with Jackie Chan and chasing him down.
Yeah, that's Twin Dragons. It's funny. It's such a kind of, it does end on a freeze frame, but it's a lot sillier. It's not a freeze frame of the person in a crashed car having been killed. It's a wedding.
Right.
But yeah, Twin Dragons. It's a super fun movie. I'd say if you haven't seen the movie, I think the Dimension dub's a good way to watch it the first time, because it's kind of gives you kind of an idea of what's going on. And the subtitles for the Hong Kong version I saw weren't the best. So like some of the humor, some of the humor doesn't, like, if it was translated better, it'd be funnier. But it's great, and the extra scenes are a fun they become a fun bonus instead of something that's cut out.
Yeah, I would say like Heroes 3 Easy mode. Watch the Dimension version. Heroes 3 Hard mode. Watch the Hong Kong version.
Yeah. That's great. Also, I think the Dimension version, it's an awesome Jackie Chan film to share with someone that may or may not be that interested or versed in Jackie movies. I think it really plays well to pretty wide audience.
Right, and it falls in line with why we're covering these Jackie films in the first place. This breakout of him in the United States.
Yeah. And we already did Super Cop, so we can't do that one. So
right. And it really rewatching it, I think it was kind of a no-brainer to re-edit and package this for America. Incredibly entertaining movie that is really filled with some incredible, really some career highlight Jackie Chan action.
Well, thank you so much for checking out our little program here. If you like the show, then leave us a review on whatever you're listening to this on. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at Heroes3 Podcasts. That's Heroes, the number 3 podcasts on all 3 of them. Thank you so much to the Kung Fu Cinema subreddit if you're checking us out from there. And Carlos, you have a little special plug, right, before we jump to the end?
Yeah, sure. So you guys probably, hopefully you've heard RoboGirl 2 because Marty and I worked on that a lot, and it's awesome. But I was very fortunate to work with his brother Will on another album. It's called Superstar Squadron, and it's another chiptune album. It's really cool. It's awesome to me how you guys have your own voices, right? So you guys are both working in the same medium, but you can tell who's worked on what. Me as a fan, I can tell. And
super cool.
This one is like a really cool kind of concept album, kind of like what we did with RoboGirl. And it's like an adventure, kind of a shooting game chiptune album, and it's really cool. And it's available on the Super Marcato Brothers Bandcamp. And I'm pretty sure there will be like a bonus episode on the Super Marcato Bros feed that we'll link to through our channels. And I hope you check it out. It's great.
Awesome.
Well, that is it for us, but I guess, Marty, what is our training for next week?
So we're actually going to cap off this Jackie Chan Makes It Big in America arc with really one of my favorite movies of this period. It's Who Am I, which is directed by the man himself. And this
That's
is
on our
this
on
is
our
such an
shared
exciting
drive. Our shared drive where we have information. That's how Carlos wrote down the name of the next movie is with multiple eyes.
Yeah. And really, let's not give too much away as far as the premise of this movie or anything. But this is, yeah, I would say enough time has passed where I would call this a Jackie Chan classic.
Awesome. Well, until next week where we're checking out Who Am I? I'm Matthew.
I'm Marty.
I'm Who Am I?
I don't know, Carlos. And we are the Heroes 3. Remember your training. Heroes 3 is part of Marcato Brothers Podcast Network.